So, hello listener, welcome to this week's episode of Mysterious Cryptids. My name is Rob, I'm your host, I'm here for the next, 30 minutes or so, and this week we're doing part 2 of Cannock Chase. Now, in part 1, I touched upon some of the stories that have come out of Cannock Chase, that, some of the more run-of-the-mill stories, but also some of the more extreme stories, the more for some people hard to believe stories, but nonetheless, them kind of stories. In this episode, I want to touch upon our experience in the area of Cannock Chase. And very recently, we've been, in the last week or so, we've been to Cannock Chase and we've done our own investigations. First time as a team and everything else, we've been there. And first time I've been there, first time I've done any kind of research out there. And I must admit, it's a really weird, eerie place. A very eerie place. I mean, really weird. And in this episode, I want to talk about kind of like my experience there and the things I found, the things that I came across. The things I was looking for, but also the things that I believe I came across, and I'll be posting about some of the evidence and stuff that I found over on our blog on cryptidresearch.com in the next week or so. But I wanted to talk about the Cannock Chase that we had, like our experience of Cannock Chase, and so yeah, in this episode we're going to be discussing Cannock Chase, and it's part 2 of the Cannock Chase. I might end up doing a multi-series of this, like mini-series within the podcast. So it might be like Cannock Chase part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Because it is a place I'm going to go again. Because although it's really odd place, but it has a lot of different kind of activities. It has a lot, like, people claim ghost sightings, UFO sightings, Bigfoot sightings, werewolf sightings. The reason I went was I wanted to research and look up on some very recent big cat sightings in and around the area, and basically big cat sightings in the UK and what have you. And I wanted to focus on this one area at this time, and it was, I won't say the exact area I went to, but it was within the Cannock Chase area, and there's been quite a bit of activity at the moment of like big cat sightings. That kind of thing. It was a very interesting place. It was quite wet when I went. It's an eerie place anyway, but the wetness and the dampness, and I kind of like the the haze, the low lying like cloud and stuff. It just added to that, and it kind of does feel like you've slipped into this weird area. I can't really explain it unless you've been. It's a very odd place to describe. It's a very weird place to describe, unless you've been. It's very beautiful. It is very beautiful. It's very pretty. It's very beautiful, but it has this side to it that's just it's just very hard to put your finger on. It's very eerie. It's a very eerie place. And you find yourself, all of a sudden you can hear like animals and stuff, and then it just goes so quiet. So quiet. And it's just, I don't know, it's just a very eerie place, and unless you've ever been, it's hard to explain. But when we went to have a look for these British big cat sites, because I am adamant, I want to be the person that actually films a British big cat without like any kind of, or is it this, or is it that, could it be this, could it be that. I want to get crystal clear video evidence of what I know I've seen. Right, so that's what I want to do. I wanted to do that, so that's the reason I went. I went to have a look for British big cats, pumas, panthers, that kind of thing. Things that shouldn't be here, but I know they are here, so I wanted to have a look for that, and that's why I went. And I found some very interesting things. I found some possible footprints. I found. See, the thing with these cats is they spend a lot of the time. They can spend a lot of their time in trees and stuff like that, and what have you. And I've kind of evidence around that as well. So I mentioned I will be putting all this onto our blog over the next week or so. But there's just yeah, it's just a very weird place. And anyway, but I went to look for British big cats, and we'd spent the first day we spent kind of setting up camp, and we were just kind of getting ready, because these animals are nocturnal. They tend to come out more at night than they do during the day. They are seen during the day, because obviously we're predominantly up during the day, but there's a few of us that go around during the night and stuff, so the same for them. And obviously, if even though they are here, their population is probably small. And I've mentioned this before, the deer population, for instance, in the UK is about 6 million. How many times have you seen a deer in your life? You don't see them often. Considering how many there is, you don't see them often. So if there's a small population of a few thousand of these animals, you're probably not going to see them all that often either. That's why the sightings are so rare. But I believe I came across what could be footprints, definitely footprints. They don't look like canine footprints. They were far too big, in my opinion, for canine footprints, but they degraded quite a bit. It was hard because it's difficult, because in them kind of damp conditions, it is perfect for footprinting, because obviously it's muddy, footprints go down, they make the footprint. But they also wash away very quickly, so unless you're on top of them and you can literally cast them there and then, they're very hard to cast, and they're very hard to, because that was my ultimate goal, was to go and cast some kind of evidence. I wanted to do that this time, and unfortunately I wasn't able to do that, because the things that we had found, they were washed out. But it was quite cool in a way, because the way we were, there was a water source nearby, but where we were, it looked like this creature had gone down to the water, but at almost like a perpendicular angle. It was almost walking along the bed, the water bed, and then it kind of, I don't know if it went to the water, maybe a drink, and then walked away, but almost straight away from it, if that makes sense. So it was walking along, it got to a point, it stopped, and then 90 degrees to the left, because the water would have been on its right, so 90 degrees on its left, it kind of walked off and went into wooded area. And then, but after it left the bank about maybe 20 yards, the prints were, you couldn't really see them anymore. It gone onto grass and stuff, so you couldn't really see. But where the mud was exposed, where there was more soil exposed, you could see where the footprints had been, but they were quite degraded. Some of them were filled up with water and stuff. It was quite hard to see, but they were big. They were quite big prints. Now, at first, my first instinct was, have they been eroded? Are they possible dog prints that they've been eroded somehow and made bigger? To me, no, because I didn't see any human prints. No boot prints or like that. It was just an animal print. So if it had been a dog, it would have had to be a dog on its own. It wasn't deer. I know what deer prints look like. So for me, I think the most common thing that people confuse big cat prints with is often dog prints. You can get some massive dogs, absolutely huge dogs, and sometimes they can be confused, but to me, they were definitely canine. Dog prints tend to have this it's the claw mark. So it's the claw mark at the beginning of or the end, should I say, their paw, and you can see where the claw mark is. Now obviously with big cats, they redact, is that the word I'm looking for? Not retract their claws, like domestic cats do. You can have them out or have them in. Dogs can't do that. They're out all the time, so they kind of leave that mark, and you can tell the difference usually. But obviously, because these were a bit degraded, I don't think they were particularly old. They probably were made in the last 2 days, but because of where they were, because we'd had quite a lot of rain, it was quite degraded, and it was very hard to say definitively what it were. But to me, it looked odd. It looked out of place. It didn't strike me as a dog because of the size. So it would have to have been on the larger side of a dog. It would have had to been on a much larger side of a dog. and I didn't see any evidence of like people being around there, because we were literally in the middle of nowhere at this point. We were quite, off the track, because that's the whole idea. We do kind of try to go off the track as much as we can. So it was weird. It was a weird track to find, but unfortunately I didn't get any photo evidence of. I mean, I took some photos of the footprints, obviously, but I didn't get any actual photos of big cats themselves, or a video that I would love to be able to get. I would love to be able to prove once and for all that these things are in the UK, because I know they are. I absolutely know they are. I've seen them. I know they are. So that was kind of our trip back, but first time really we've been there. But yeah, our trip to Cannock Chase, and it was, like I said, a very eerie place. We are going to go back again. We are going to go and have a look again. I might make this into like a more of a series where, we have like a series within the podcast, if that makes sense, because I would like to do that with other places as well. Like I mentioned before, we're going over to America to study the Bigfoot sightings in Pennsylvania in October, so I would like to do that as well, around the Bigfoot one and the British big cats. But yeah, our back to our research in the Cannock Chase area. Again, I don't want to say the location exactly where we were, because I just like, for now I'd like to keep that to myself. But we were quite well in there. We were, middle of nowhere kind of thing, well and truly off the track. We had to walk quite a while to get to where we were going and stuff, and it was good. But it was a very weird place. It was a very weird place. And whilst we're talking about the British big cats, there has been quite a lot of sightings recently in the UK of British big cats, and we've been sharing them over on our Facebook page, which is Cryptozoology Research Organisation, or CRO, and we've been sharing them over there recently, and there's been quite a lot. So I wanted to touch upon a couple of them that we found quite interesting and we've shared to our page, and it is to go in with our findings that we found at the Cannock Chase area. And I've got a little bit more I want to talk about the Cannock Chase area, but I wanted to include these as well. So recently there's been sightings in the Scotland area, big cat. The Scottish Nature Heritage, the SNH, recorded a description of a big cat the size of a Labrador, which killed 36 sheep between August 2015 and January 2016. It was described as a black or black brown, depending on the light, and a panther kind of look to it. Panther or leopard. It was described roughly the size of a Labrador, or a little bit bigger, which is kind of what I was talking about with the footprints down in Cannock. They were very much... If it was a dog, it would have to... in my opinion, it would have to have been bigger than a Labrador. I do a lot of tracking and stuff. I'm out in the woods quite a lot. Every week I'm out. So I'm out every week looking for these things, or different cryptids and stuff. So I'm out all the time. I spend a lot of time out there. So for me, they were weird. But we will be sharing them to the blog, like I mentioned. So you'll be able to see them for yourself. But they were weird. But anyway, this article goes on to say an 86-page dossier was released by the Scottish Government showing tooth prints were closer to the size of a wolf than a lynx. Now, the reason I wanted to mention this one is it says tooth prints. Now, I mentioned earlier in the podcast, we saw what looked like claw marks. They were in the area where we found the trees, and they looked like claw marks. They looked like something had been, like cats do on sofas, and the sides of tables and stuff. When they're kind of, I don't know, I'm guessing they're sharpening the claws or whatever. They looked like that, and they were pretty deep. I mean, don't get me wrong, they weren't like 2 inches in or out, but they were pretty deep, and it was consistent. It was obviously been doing it for a bit, or it does it often there. And they were on about 3 trees in total in this one area, and it were really odd. But it was odd, but it was it was interesting. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was fascinating, because I don't know any animals that would do that. Dogs don't do that. I've never seen a dog do that. Dogs do not do that. They do not scratch on trees to sharpen their claws. They just don't do that. So other than cats, I don't know what does do that. So it was more circumstantial evidence that British big cats roam the countryside, and possibly Cannock. But this document in particular goes, a wolf would be 45, 14 and 28 millimeters respectively. The most of the images depict sheep that have been partially eaten, and it is difficult to make out what sort of detail or what sort of animals ate them. Now the thing is, you wouldn't just get, the thing is about this is you wouldn't just get one wolf. Wolves do live in packs, so you would, and there's a lot more signs. Wolves are quite vocal, they're quite noisy. You know, I've been in that situation where I've heard wolves and stuff cry before. When one goes off, then more of them go off. You know, it is that kind of thing. So for me, wolf is absolutely out of there. But it is, this article is kind of showing that the fact that there is more things to look for than prints and photos and stuff. The fact that they found tooth prints is interesting. It is interesting, and it's weird because, like I said, we found in our Cannock expedition, we found what looked to be claw marks, very much to be claw marks. So in 2017, Scottish Wildlife Action suggested the cat may be a hybrid which was unneutered. An email said, we believe it may have been some hybrid that Rue Campbell caught during his study of 2013-2014, which is previously analysed as 80% wildcat, so it was a kind of like a mixture in between. The thing is these aren't big enough to eat, even if it is, because there's obviously wildcats out there, but what they're kind of talking about is more the size of domestic cats. They're not big enough to eat sheep, and they're certainly not big enough to leave claw marks and stuff like that. So, and then there's other ones I wanted to show and share with you. So the other ones recently in the UK, this is in the Peak District, so this is closer to where we were. We were in Staffordshire, but it was closer to where we were. A big cat expert commented on the skeleton found in the Peak District recently, and now this skeleton was found in a tree. Again, as mentioned earlier in the podcast, cats do tend to live, especially wild cats, big cats, you know, pumas, lynx and stuff like that, tend to live in trees. They do tend to live in trees, or at least spend some of their time in trees. There's evidence of them, even what they'll do is they'll kill the prey and then they'll drag it up to a tree. You know what I mean? So they'll drag it up to a tree because then it's off the floor for predation, for scavengers. Other animals don't come along and nick it because obviously it's in a tree. So they often do that. They do that. But yeah, basically this article goes on. It was walking in an area with her husband and described the skeleton as shocking and macabre. Bernadette, the woman, later published the photos on social media, and many people saying this proves that big cats hunt the area and have dragged another animal up into a tree. Now that is standard, bog standard, big cat kind of behaviour. That is what they do. They will drag up animals. But this was clearly, again, we're going to share these photos to our blog, but it is clearly a massive cat. This is clearly a massive cat. And it was found in the Peak District up in a tree. So it obviously died in the tree, and then it has just, you know, decayed, and then it's left its skeleton. The informant who took the carcass photo mentioned pumas, the tan-coloured mountain lion, in their native lands. Pumas tend to drag and partly cover their prey remains in trees. Kind of like caches, you know, they store the food for later. So then if they are in a day where they can't catch anything, they've got something from before. Basically, hoisting the carcass up into a tree, you know, might not sound like the easiest thing to do, but for these animals, it is quite easy. It's quite natural for them. So the other one I wanted to look at was, again, in Scotland. Yes, here it is. So the other one I wanted to look at recently is it's in Scotland. So it's in Dumfries, or the Dumfries area. They were walking in the field known locally as the American because of its size, it's claimed that they spotted a very large black cat. So again, this is a very recent sighting. I mean, 2 of them have been in Scotland. These 2 I wanted to talk about. There's been so many. There's been dozens recently, but these are the 2 I wanted to talk about. 2 have been in Scotland. These are all shared on the Cryptozoology Research Organisation Facebook group. Please feel free to go check that out. We do share up, all kinds of evidence and stuff over there. It's really cool. It's a really nice, relaxed area. There's also our website as well, which is cryptidresearch.com. Please feel free to go up there. That's where our blog is. That's where we share all our findings and things we find interesting from other places. There's massive, well, not massive, but it's growing database over there as well. But yeah, these are things I wanted to share with you just because of our recent findings over in Cannock. And like I said, the things we found in Cannock were, yes, circumstantial. Yes, you have to assume certain stuff to get there. And I've mentioned before in previous podcasts, I don't like doing that. And I don't like it when science does it. Certainly don't like it when science does it. When they have to assume, a lot to discard evidence and stuff. I've touched upon it. I don't like that. So I don't like to assume. I like to have facts. But to me, these things all add up to it as well. So they all add up to the bigger picture. And sometimes I think it's... I listen to the Bigfoot and Beyond podcast, and the host on there, Cliff and Bobo, it's Cliff who always says sometimes a lot of maybes can add up to a probably. And I like that saying, because I think sometimes you when you go out as a researcher, you can't expect to find the DNA evidence that will crack the case, or the video that will crack the case, or the photo that will crack the case. Sometimes it is a lot of little bits that you have to add up. And for us, we were there 3 days and we found possible footprints, but the most intriguing thing for me were the claw marks, because I don't know of any other animal that, and they weren't massively high, but they were far too high and far too big and deep to be a domestic cat. But yeah, and dogs don't do that. They simply don't do that. So to me, yes, it's a lot of circumstantial evidence. It's a lot of maybes, but again, invoking Cliff, it's a lot of maybes can sometimes make a probably, and I like that. I do like that as a researcher. I think that's a really cool way to look at things, and a really good way to look at things, because whether you're in the game, if you like to do it because you enjoy doing it, or do it because, for me, I enjoy doing this, but I also want to get on film what I saw, my personal sighting. If you've never heard of my personal sighting was some time ago. I saw a very big cat, a very big black cat. It had very distinct yellowish eyes. It was very big. And it walked less than 20 foot. 20 foot. I was walking through this path, and I say path. It was like a game trail, I suppose, through some trees. But it was not a small trail. I'm guessing some people have walked through there at some time, and it's opened up a bit, but it's not a path as such. There's no pavement or all. And this thing just literally came from one side of the bush, walked out. It was not alarmed to see me, but it was surprised. You could tell it didn't expect anyone to be there. It kind of jerked itself around, looked at me, looked away, looked at me again, and it just walked off. It just went off into the other side, across, again, I use the word path loosely, but it literally cut my path and went into the other bush, and I saw it for a good 5 or 6 seconds. Don't sound long, but you count 5 or 6 seconds when you're facing something that literally, it could, if it wanted to, it could have caused me serious damage. It was big enough to hurt me. I wouldn't want to take it on, because I think it would have been not very good for me. I think if it wanted to, it could have ripped my head off. And yeah, that's my sighting. So I know these things are here, but obviously because science doesn't necessarily recognise them as being here, and we know these things exist in the wild. We know they live in in other countries, we know pumas and panthers live all over the place, but they're not supposed to be here. And that's what makes them a cryptid. That's what makes them unusual in the British Isles. They're not supposed to be here, but I know they are here. I've seen them. I know they're here. So to wrap up, basically our investigation or our expedition to Cannock this time was good. It was fruitful, I suppose, in a way. I wish I could have got something where I could have casted it, and I could have shared that with you. I do wish I could have seen that. I have shared other footprints before on other sites, and obviously on my own site as well, of other footprints that I absolutely believe are big cat footprints. I absolutely believe these were huge. It was like 3.5 inch long, and they were quite wide. These were big prints. They were quite well defined, so you could see them quite easily. But unfortunately, the ones we saw in Cannock were quite washed out. I wish I could have got better footage. And the interesting bit was the marks on the tree. Really interesting. So this episode really was just to catch you up on our investigation at Cannock. We are going to go back again in a few weeks, we think. We're going to go again, have a look again, see what else, maybe try another area, Cannock. There's been quite a lot of sightings there. There's other places we want to visit, but I do want to go back to Cannock because it is such a weird place. I'm not just going to be looking for big cats in Cannock. I also want to spend some time and talking to some of the locals who've claimed to have seen Bigfoot-like creatures in the Cannock area, which is not a name you would expect with the UK, Bigfoot. It's not a name you would associate with us, but more and more people are having more and more sightings in that area, and it is fascinating, to say the least. I mean, it's weird. It's a weird area. It's a very weird area. I know I've said that a lot, but it's very strange. It's a very eerie place, and yeah, I could definitely see why people kind of get the heebie-jeebies, if you like. There, it's a very odd place. But yeah, to sum this up, our investigation was somewhat fruitful, and we will be sharing. Obviously, you've heard the account from me in this podcast of what we found, but you'll also be seeing the photos and the other evidence that we've seen over on our website, cryptidresearch.com, and our Facebook page, which is Cryptozoology Research Organisation, or CRO, over on Facebook. And yeah, you can make up your mind yourself. Personally, I think it was, especially the tree, I think it was definitely good indication that there's big cats in that area, and we will be going back. But that's basically what we found. That is what we found in our Cannock, or our first Cannock expedition, and I want to share that with you today. I know this is a little bit more informal, this podcast. It's a bit more of me sitting down and chatting with you guys, but and on other weeks we've had more like not stories, but you know what I mean, like tales of, like particular kidnappings or alleged kidnappings of, like Sasquatch and stuff like that. And I know we've had more stuff like that in previous things, but I wanted to sit down and just have a nice informal chat with you this week about what we found on our expeditions, because we do go on them quite a lot. I'm out every week into the wild, disappearing into the woods, trying to find evidence of these, beautiful animals, and just spending time out there. So yeah, I just wanted to sit down and have a chat with you this week. If you want to contact me this week, if you want to get a hold of me, you want to tell me your stories, your experience with Cannock, I would love to hear your experience with Cannock Chase, and what you think of it, what you thought of the area, if and when you've been. If you want to email me, it's info@robbray.net, or you can also drop me a message through the website, which is cryptidresearch.com. You go there, you send me a message through there, it all comes to my email address anyway, or like I say, you can email me at info@robbray.net. And yeah, I'm going to leave that there for this week, because obviously we've got other things, there's other things I want to talk about, but we'll have to leave them for another podcast. But this week, yeah, I wanted to share with you our experience of Cannock Chase. Hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I hope you like it. I know it's a little bit different. I plan on doing these every so often, you know what I mean. I'm going to have the more structured ones where we have like a tale of abductions, or a tale of sightings, or, you know, I've got one in the pipe obviously about Ape Canyon. If you've never heard of Ape Canyon, you're new to it. Basically that's a tale from like 99 years ago, where these Sasquatch basically attacked this cabin in the middle of nowhere for a whole night, tried to get in, and there was gunfire and everything. It's very, very Hollywood, but it has a lot of merits to it. So, you know, we normally do stuff like that. Like we recently did the Casey Hathaway story, and we done, you know, the old Rampendek story and stuff like that. But this week I wanted to share with you our findings in a more informal chat. So I hope you've enjoyed it. We will be doing these every so often, intermittently, you know, sprinkled throughout the podcast over the many months and years to come. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. Anyway, I'm going to leave that there. Like I say, you want to email me, info@robbray.net, and I shall speak to you again next week. Have a brilliant week, whatever you're doing, whether you're getting out into the field or you're just having some time at home or working, whatever you're doing. Hope you have a brilliant week, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye for now.